I never imagined that I would consent to marrying a complete stranger for financial gain. However, when your rent is 3 months past due and your landlord threatens to evict you, desperation drives you to act irrationally. Brooke is my name. I'm a struggling independent contractor, Portland-based illustrator, and all of the hard work I had put in was about to be lost. Then, at a gallery opening, I ran into Alina Voss, where I unintentionally covered her pricey designer dress in red wine. She was this aloof, well-off tech executive who treated me like I was dirt on her shoe. However, when she heard me and my mother fighting over another, everything changed when I arranged to have dinner with a stranger. Alina came up to me with the most bizarre, I had never heard such a proposition. A 1-year fictitious marriage. She had to look settled in order to get some huge investor agreement and in order to prevent my life from utterly collapsing. I needed money. $100 was an upfront for the sake of pretending to be her spouse. At first, I laughed in her face because it sounded so absurd. However, upon returning home, I discovered reality struck me like a freight train when I saw an eviction notice taped to my door. Thus, I agreed to the arrangement when I gave her a call back. We established ground rules, separate sleeping quarters, and little interaction. No emotional connection at all. It was to be straightforward, just business. However, residing in her sterile penthouse, having late-night talks, and acting as though they were in love began to transform everything. Those practiced kisses and phony touches started to feel far too real, and I discovered that I was falling for the woman I had never meant to be in love. Prepare yourself. Buckle up and subscribe before we begin this video for a unique surprise. Tomorrow, I gazed at the eviction notice that was affixed to the door of my apartment. The harsh fluorescent lighting in the hallway is making even more menacing are the red letters. Rent is 3 months past due. You have 14 days to pay the $4,800 or vacate. With my hands shaking from a mix of rage and sheer fear, I crumpled the paper in my fist. There was a buzzing sound on my phone. My mother texted me. Remember Sunday dinner? Mija, I want you to meet someone special. I felt like screaming. The last thing I needed was another uncomfortable encounter with a man who would glance at my clothes that were stained with paint and unkempt curls and conclude I'm not worth his time. Above the coffee shop, I ascended the short stairs to my studio apartment. Feeling heavier with every step. The aroma of pastries and espresso that usually gave me comfort now caused my hunger to clench in my empty stomach. When was the last time I had a proper meal? At what time had I? When was the last time I painted something I truly felt proud of? In the corner, my easel held a partially completed commission of, if I was lucky, I might be able to get $200 for someone's pet. The rent funds it might as well have cost $1 million. I flopped down on my used couch, took out my laptop, and began looking through job postings. Nothing. Experience was necessary for everything. I didn't have or received less money than I did for my freelance illustration work. My small space's walls seemed to be drawing near. Every available surface was leaned against by canvases. I couldn't afford to frame some of the completed pieces. Others gave up when they lost their motivation or their clients stopped answering my emails. My art supplies were all over the place. I didn't have space for a proper workspace. So I worked across the kitchen table. I didn't think my life at 32 would be like this. Mom's picture showed up on the screen when my phone rang. She immediately called back after I left it on voicemail. She always did. Will you be joining us for dinner on Sunday? Ola and Brooke. Mommy, I'm not sure. I have a lot of work on my plate. Work can wait. Family matters. I also mentioned that I wanted you to meet someone. He is a prosperous lawyer, and his mom attends our church. I massaged my temples as a well-known headache began to grow. I have no interest in meeting anyone at this moment. You're 32? Brooke. When will you get married and start a family? Maria, your cousin, is younger than you and recently gave birth to her second child. Mom, I'm gay. We have discussed this. I'm not intending to wed a stranger and bear his children. The other end was silent. The same awkward silence that occurred each time I brought this fact to her attention. Simply put, you haven't yet met the right man. It doesn't operate that way. For me, just come to dinner. With a wave of defeat, I closed my eyes. All right, I'll be present. Fantastic. Put on something pleasant, not those paint clothes. All right. I gazed at my image on the black phone screen after she hung up. Hair falling out of its disheveled bun, dark circles beneath my brown eyes, and a smudge of blue paint on my cheek that I hadn't noticed when cleaning my face. I appeared to be a broke artist who was unable to make ends meet. The following night, I discovered myself at the opening reception of the Morrison Gallery. They were paying me, not because I wanted to be there, $50 to quickly sketch guest portraits. Although it wasn't much, I did get $50. Didn't previously. I placed my little easel in the corner and observed affluent art collectors sipping wine and acting as though. Recognize abstract expressionism. The gallery featured polished concrete floors and white walls, the type of sterile space that gave the impression that my vibrant, disorganized artwork was totally out of place. I drew a few portraits of people, each costing roughly 10 minutes and bringing in an additional $20. The math was gloomy. To catch up on rent at this rate, I would have to work nonstop for months. A tall, graceful woman came up to my station. In a manner that shouted cash, she wore a fitted navy dress, and her sleek black hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, most likely more expensive than my rent each month. She examined the portrait I was in with her dark eyes, ending with a level of intensity that unnerved me. She said, "How much for one of those?" In a clear and expert, she said, $20, and took the chair across from me without saying anything else. I began drawing, attempting to convey the angular features of her face and the icy intelligence in her eyes. There was something about her that made it seem as though she existed behind glass and could not be touched. "You have a lot of talent," she said. A few minutes later, "Regards." I concentrated on getting her to open her mouth correctly. The faint decline that implied she wasn't grinning. Frequently, "Where have you displayed your work?" Startled by the question, I looked up at her. "A couple of coffee shops, a few internet galleries. It's unfortunate. You ought to be in actual galleries." Before I could react, I was bumped from behind. The glass of red wine I had been nursing flew when my elbow jerked, spilled straight onto the woman's immaculate dress after leaving my hand. The navy was covered in the burgundy liquid, cloth similar to blood. I leaped to my feet and grabbed napkins, saying, "Oh God, I'm so sorry," from the refreshment table nearby. "I'm really sorry. I'll cover the cleaning." She rose slowly, her face unreadable as she gazed down at her ruined dress. The red wine was discolored, the front of her attire, and as I determined how much, I could almost see dollar signs floating above her head. The cost of replacing it would be high. "It's fine," she said. However, her tone had become even colder than it was. "No, that dress probably costs more, and it's really not fine than I earn in 6 months. Please give me your number, and I'll find a way to pay for it." She gave me a look at that point, truly examined me, and I had the impression that she could see right through all of my issues and fears. "What's your name?" "Calderon." "Brooke." "Well, mishaps do happen." "Brooke Calderon." She grabbed one, removed the napkins from my grasp, and wiped the blemish. "However, you are correct regarding the dress. The cost was high." My heart sank even lower. "I'll find a way to reimburse you. I swear." She pulled out her phone and gave it to me. "Enter your phone number." With trembling hands, I typed in my contact details. I'm already estimating in my head how many photo shoots I'd have to do before I could afford to replace her attire. When I returned the phone after taking a quick look at the screen before turning to face me. "Brooke, I'll be in contact." She left without saying anything. I stood there with wine-stained napkins and a mounting sense of dread after hearing another word. I put my artwork away, supplies, and departed early from the gallery. I feel like the $50 in my pocket is nothing, in contrast to the debt I recently accrued. At my parents' house, Sunday dinner was just as terrible as I had anticipated. Roberto, a patent, was the enigmatic individual my mother had wished me to meet. Lawyer who talked about his recent promotion and caseload throughout the entire meal. He was quite pleasant, perfectly straight and perfectly boring. "Your mother told me you're an artist, Brooke," he said over my mom's well-known Pernod. "I also do some murals and illustrations." "That's intriguing. Is that stable financially?" I almost choked on my rice. "Not especially." "No." My mom gave me a stern look. "Brooke has a lot of talent. All she has to do is wait for the right moment." "Have you?" Regarded as instructing. Benefits for art teachers are good. I've given it some thought. I had given it a lot of thought. But giving up on my dreams felt like conceding defeat. On the table, my phone buzzed. An unidentified number had sent a text message. "Is it possible for us to meet tomorrow night? I want to present you with a business idea." I gazed at the screen, perplexed. Then I recalled the gallery woman, the pricey gown, and the likely leaking wine stain to make me bankrupt. "All right, Mika," my dad inquired. "Yes, only work-related matters." I promptly replied to the text. "Is the dress at issue here? I'm trying to gather the funds." The answer was prompt. "It has nothing to do with the dress. At 700 pura. Mal, meet me at the Cascadia restaurant. Tomorrow. Request, Voss Reserve." Voss, her first name was unknown to me, but apparently she was aware of mine. Distracted, I wondered what kind of business proposal someone like her would want to make during the remainder of dinner, might have for a person such as myself. I pushed Roberto to stop talking about intellectual property law, food around my plate, and tried to think about what would happen the next day. My mother positioned me in the corner after supper kitchen as I assisted with the dishes. "Roberto appears to be a very kind person." "Mom, he's all right. He does a good job. He is steady. He's from a decent family. I have no interest in it. She used more force than was necessary to dry a plate. Brooke, you can't stay by yourself forever. Life is more enjoyable when you have someone with whom to share it. I understand, but the right person must be involved. The appropriate individual. She gave a head shake. You're also picky. That is your issue. I didn't bother to clarify that being picky about men wasn't my issue because men weren't even an option. Some conflicts weren't worth waging, particularly since I was already in danger of being evicted and strangers in Weinstein made enigmatic business proposals. The following night, I felt totally out of place as I stood outside the Cascadia restaurant. It was the type of high-end venue where the cost of the appetizers exceeded my weekly grocery budget. I attempted to control my curls and wore my one respectable dress, a black item I had purchased for a job interview that ended in failure, into something approaching a professional appearance. I followed the hostess to a table in the rear where the gallery woman was sitting, waited while sitting. She changed into an equally expensive-looking charcoal gray suit as the gown that I had destroyed. Not a single hair was out of place. Her hair was still pulled back in that flawless bun. "Thank you for coming," she said as I took a seat. "Hello, I'm Alina Voss. It's good to meet you formally. I apologize once more. Forget about your dress," she said, pointing to the menu. "Place any order you like. We have a few items to talk about." I ordered the cheapest item I could find, a pasta dish that was still more expensive than I usually spend on meals for a full day. Alina placed her wine order without checking the costs. The sort of casual assurance that resulted from not having to worry about money. "What is the purpose of this business proposal?" Then, as soon as the server departed, Elena's dark, piercing eyes were studying me as she leaned back in her chair. I blinked. "I need a wife. I apologize." "What?" "Not a true wife. For a year. A fake one." "Are you serious now?" "Very serious. Next month, I'll be meeting with a group of investors who are very conservative and traditional, men who think stability comes with marriage. They are thinking of investing $50 million in my business, but they have voiced worries about my private life." "Your private life?" "I'm 35, successful, and unmarried. To them, that implies that I'm either hiding something or am unstable. They want to know if I'm settled, dedicated, and able to long-term partnerships." I gazed at her, attempting to comprehend her words. "You wish to hire someone to act like, to be your spouse." "That's right. You obviously need money, which is why you thought of me. You look good, sufficient to be credible. You also give off the impression of being able to keep quiet about business agreements." Her being direct was both refreshing and offensive. "What is the amount of money at issue?" $100,000, $50,000, $1,000 upfront, 50 was in at the end of the contract. I was struck by the number like a physical assault. $100,000, $1,000, enough to cover 2 years' worth of rent, enough to stop worrying about survival and concentrate on my art, sufficient to cease living paycheck to paycheck and truly create a life. What would I need to do? Take up residence in my penthouse, participate in social, serves as my spouse, make people believe that we are in love for 365 days a year. Days. In an attempt to slow my pounding heart, I took a sip of water. This is crazy. It's a commercial agreement. No more, no less. What about physical belongings, sleeping arrangements, and separate bedrooms? No sex, little to no physical contact, only when required for appearances. And we quietly get divorced at the end of the year. You leave my life after taking your money. The server, I hardly noticed that they brought our food. $100,000, $1,000, the answer to every issue I have while sitting in a fancy suit, directly across the table from me. I questioned, "Why me? I think you could find someone more appropriate. A member of your social circle." A member of my social circle would anticipate more than just financial compensation. They'd want money to pursue your art. It's cleaner this way. You want connections, status, and eventually a real relationship. You act as though you love me, but it's actually very simple. We both get what we need, so act like you love me. I glanced around the restaurant at all the elegantly dressed patrons, costly meals without first examining their financial situation. $100,000, $1,000 would alter my whole life. However, getting married to someone you don't know, even pretending to be married to someone you don't, felt like stepping over a line I wasn't sure I could get back. I need time to consider it. Alina produced a business. You have until Friday. After that, I'll locate the card and slide it across the table. I stared at Alina's business card for 3 days, flipping it over in my hands until the edges were $100,000, $1,000. The figure tormented my dream and accompanied me as I went about my everyday business of applying for jobs that I couldn't get and working on commissions that hardly purchased groceries. On Thursday morning, I discovered that my art supplies were gone from my empty canvases and dried paint were all I had left after the landlord took them as collateral for my apartment. Tubes. I called Alina that afternoon and realized I had no other choice. "We need to talk terms, but I'll do it. All right, come see me at my penthouse tomorrow at noon. Elena's building was glass and steel reaching toward the sky with a doorman wearing a uniform that most likely cost more than my rent each month. To access the penthouse floor, the elevator needed a key card, and when the doors opened and I entered a room that was floor to ceiling and resembled something from an architecture magazine. The furniture was all neutral colors and clean lines, and the windows provided a broad view of Portland's skyline. It was impersonal and beautifully organized, giving the impression that no one actually lived there. Show of wealth and prestige. Elena came out of what I thought was her home office wearing dark jeans and a "Welcome to your new home." This is a white blouse that somehow managed to look both casual and expensive. Amazing. As I placed my duffel bag close to the door, I became acutely conscious of how uncomfortable I appeared in my paint-stained outfit. Clothing. We must set some ground rules. She gave me a folder full of documents. The contract covers everything, but I'll just highlight the key points. I tried not to think as we sat on her immaculate white couch about how the fabric might be stained by my old jeans. Elena explained the terms in a professional tone of our arrangement. Your bedroom is down the hall, and the first bedroom is separate. Door on the right. Secondly, we always keep the appearance of marriage in public. Lastly, there is no romantic relationships with third parties throughout the duration of the contract. Fourth, complete control over the type of our arrangement. My family will ask questions, so let them know we met at the gallery. People will perceive it as romantic and impetuous. And your family. Something too quickly for me to decipher. It flashed across Elena's face. My parents are dead, and I have no other family to worry about. Her tone of voice made me want to ask more questions, but her face told me to stop. Instead, I looked over the contract, attempting to comprehend the legalese that effectively made me her employee. You have a credit card for expenses, Elena added. Clothes, personal belongings, anything you require to keep up appearances. I have scheduled a stylist to assist you tomorrow. Create a wardrobe that fits my social circle. A stylist. You'll need the clinical manner in which she spoke. Somehow, it felt less overwhelming to talk about our fictitious marriage. This was only a job, a year-long acting gig that would provide me with financial stability for the remainder of my life. When do we begin? On Saturday night, there is a charity gala. Our first public appearance as a married couple. I signed the contract with trembling hands, and Elena instantly deposited $50 into my bank account. It was unreal to see that amount on my phone screen. I had never had more. Elena showed me more than a few $1,000s all at once in my adult life. To my bedroom, which had a walk-in closet, a view, and its own bathroom. It was larger than my entire previous apartment. She left me alone to unpack, and I sat in awe of the river that left me speechless. The stylist showed up the following day with racks, and I tried to process what I had just committed to on the king-size bed. She looked me up and down, and her clothes and attitude made me feel like a charity case. Her name was Madison. We're going for subtle elegance, she declared, as if I were a particularly difficult puzzle to solve. Putting different clothes against my body, Elena's wife should look elegant without being ostentatious. Costly. But it wasn't immediately apparent. I tried on numerous dresses, each one more exquisite and costly than anything I had ever owned. Madison gave me advice on how to improve my posture, hair, and the goal is to look like you belong in Elena's world, she said, demonstrating a total ignorance of designer labels. People shouldn't be able to tell that you're new money, she said, pinning a cocktail dress in navy blue. I'm not a dime. That's right. We must fix that. Elena returned home. Madison stopped in the living room as she was describing the distinction between day and evening attire, observing me as I modeled a gray silk blouse and fitted pants. Better, she said plainly. Much better. It was all a lie, but something about her approval made my cheeks warm, which was absurd. Only a portion of the work. Saturday night came sooner than I had anticipated. Stood before my bathroom mirror, dressed in a black dress that accentuated my curves in a way that made me feel both. Madison had arranged for hair and makeup, and I hardly recognized myself with my sleek, powerful, and vulnerable appearance. Waves rather than my typical curls and flawlessly applied makeup. Elena, at precisely 7 p.m., she knocked on my bedroom door, and when I opened it, I momentarily lost my breath. She was transformed from beautiful to stunning in a midnight blue gown, with her dark hair pulled back in an "You look flawless," she said, and she wore diamond earrings that gleamed in the light as she moved, and I heard a hint of surprise in her voice. Do you, too? We gazed at, briefly, and I sensed a change between us that was most definitely not covered by the contract. After clearing her throat, Elena said, "Are you ready?" The charity gala took place at the Portland Art Museum, which seemed like a sarcastic critique of my life. We got into Elena's Tesla, and I avoided staring at the other guests as they emerged from opulent cars and limousines. They all appeared to belonged on magazine covers. Remember, Alina whispered as we walked to the doorway, we're deeply in love. We can't prevent our hands from touching. She grabbed my arm, and the mere touch caused my shoulder to get warm. The museum was changed, and my fingers felt calm and steady. Nothing like the anxious energy churning through me. For the occasion, with tasteful decor and delicate lighting, which gave the room a cozy feel in spite of its size. Passed around champagne and appetizers that were likely little pieces of art in and of themselves. Alina, sweetheart, a woman in, I haven't seen you in a long time. Margaret. She came toward us in her 60s, her jewelry gleaming like a disco ball. It was nice to see you. Elena's voice had a new warmth to it. I want you to meet my wife, she said, even though I knew the words weren't true. They gave me a sudden rush. Brooke, my wife. Margaret's eyebrows shot up. Alina, you didn't say you were dating anyone, much less getting married. Alina said softly, I think it's important to keep our private lives private, placing her hand on the small of my back. However, when, you know, in an attempt to channel the romantic impetuosity that Alina had implied, I added that it was extremely abrupt, simply couldn't wait. Margaret glanced between us with evident interest. How lovely. You two make a beautiful couple. I grinned as Alina introduced me to investors, business associates, and social contacts as we moved through the crowd. After our year ended, I tried to recall names I would never see again until my cheeks hurt. But something was incorrect. It was evident to me from the way people looked at us, the courteous but doubtful smiles, and the fleeting glances they shared. Alina also noticed, as evidenced by the slight tension in her shoulders, when they believed we weren't looking. We need to work on our chemistry, she whispered as the evening went on, and her smile grew more forced. People aren't buying it. What do you mean? A silent moment. We appear to be business associates rather than romantic partners. We must, to come across as more physically affectionate. The thought of touching Alina more than was absolutely necessary made my stomach turn, ways I didn't want to look at. All right, what do you want me to do? Do as I say? For the remainder of the evening, Elena kept her hand on mine, moved closer, and touched my arm when I had to remind myself that every touch felt electric as I laughed and fiddled with my hair during conversations. She kept saying it was all a show. She leaned in to whisper something about the man across from her during dinner. I shivered in spite of myself as she breathed warmly against my ear. I thought for a second that she might kiss me at the table as she pulled back, our faces inches apart. Rather, she grinned and resumed the conversation, leaving me feeling confused and agitated. Following the gala, we rode home in silence. Although socially, the evening had been a success, I could tell that Alina wasn't happy. We need acting lessons, she declared as we made our way into the penthouse. If we want to persuade, I'll get someone to coach us. We need to be more convincing to people that we're in love. I started my heels and collapsed onto the sofa, my feet hurting from the strange shoes. That was tiring. You performed admirably for your... Alina poured herself a glass of wine from a pricey-looking bottle for the first time. But we can do better. It felt so... The point, isn't it? I rubbed my temples, and all of a sudden, feeling the consequences of my commitment. I spent an entire year feigning love for someone who glanced at our... Alina sat on the other end of the couch, holding a wine glass. In the soft, she appeared more human than I had ever seen her in lamplight. With her hair a little musty from the evening. May I ask you something? Why is this investor deal so important to you? I asked. You already appeared to be quite successful. Alina was silent for a long time, so I assumed she wouldn't respond. At last, she said, my technology for sustainable energy is developed by the company. We could increase production with this investment and genuinely change the world. Money isn't the only factor. You're trying to save the world. I'd like to go. Something behind that matters. Her voice had a vulnerable quality that made my chest constrict for the first time. Alina Voss appeared to be a genuine person with genuine feelings rather than a walking company. In the time since I had first met her. That's truly very admirable. She glanced at me through her wine glass and something softer was visible in her dark eyes. Don't seem shocked. I'm not. It's just that you aren't exactly the idealistic type. While idealism isn't effective in the business world, it doesn't mean that not there. After a while of sitting in cozy silence, I found myself looking at her profile in the low light. She was, with its perfect features and sharp angles, it was intimidatingly beautiful, but it also had small flaws. Her mouth was slightly too large for her face. Her eyebrows were a little off-center, and she had a tiny scar on her chin. Somehow, her imperfections made her more genuine and beautiful. I said, I should go to bed, getting up before I could say anything more. Foolish. Thank you for tonight, Brooke. I know this is difficult. I went back. Alina grinned, the first truly friendly face I had ever seen. Money makes it easier. From her. Rest up. On Monday, the acting coach, who happens to be a woman named Vivian, arrived Monday morning and had 30 years of theater experience. and was impatient with what she called amateur hour, with a thick Russian accent and a critical eye. After observing Alina and me, she declared, "You two have no chemistry. Try having a basic conversation." Nothing, like two robots attempting to, Alina said defensively. "We just need some practice simulating human emotion." Yes, practice. But truth. Too, there must be truth somewhere in even the most phony love. I wanted to vanish into the floor after Vivian's exercises, which required us to look into each other's eyes for practice touching each other naturally, share embarrassing stories, and take it 1 minute at a time. The body does not lie. If you think this is phony, the audience will see this, as Vivian clarified, while adjusting Alina's hand around my waist. Is phony? You need to find something genuine to cling to. What? I asked. Alina and I talked about attraction, affection, respect, curiosity, and anything sincere that you can build on. Looks? It felt riskier to find something real between us than to pretend. Vivian now gave her a clap. Hands. My heart stopped as we rehearsed the kiss. What? Every married couple must occasionally kiss. It must appear natural in photos and public settings. Alina moved closer. Her unreadable expression. It's only for practice, isn't it? Her skin was soft and warm, and she smelled like luxury as she held my face in her hands, causing my breathing to become shallow. Vivian told her not to think about it too much, to just feel it. Elena's thumb, I found myself leaning into the touch as she traced my cheekbone. And every sensible thought went to the bottom when she leaned down to kiss me, escaped my thoughts. Her lips were gentle and cautious, and for an eternity, I forgot this was all a lie. Elena's eyes were wide with what may have been surprise when we parted ways, and I felt lightheaded and unsteady. Better, Vivian said approvingly. Much better. As if the world had taken a slight detour. Do it now. Once more. The best and worst thing that could have happened was that we practiced kissing until it became instinctive. Occurred, something cracked open inside my chest each time Alina's lips touched mine. Something I wasn't supposed to have feelings for a woman who paid me to act as though I loved her. We had fallen in love after 3 weeks of cohabitation, into what felt like a dangerously domestic routine. Every day, Alina brought me coffee, morning, expertly crafted with sugar and cream, while I prepared a breakfast that truly included vegetables rather than her typical protein bars. In cozy silence, we would read the news on our phones while seated at her marble kitchen island. Alina surprised me by not letting me use the easel I had placed in the living room corner with the best light, griping about the paintbrushes and tubes that, despite my best attempts to stay, seemed to spread to every surface. Arranged. I occasionally caught her observing me at work, her face unreadable. She asked, "What are you painting?" One morning, she came up behind me carrying her car keys and briefcase and asked. I had been developing a series that was motivated by our. I couldn't tell her that was a phony relationship. 2 dancing figures with their faces turned away were depicted on the canvas, from one another, linked yet distinct, merely experimenting with concepts of distance and connection. Alina researched. She applied the same passion to the painting as she did to everything else. It's lovely, sad, but lovely, in ways unrelated to artistic validation. Her praise made my stomach turn. Regards, I'll be late tonight at home. Meeting of the board. At home, the word came out so easily that I pondered whether she had observed. I had never felt more at home than I did in this penthouse, which was an issue I couldn't afford to consider. Alina was at work that afternoon when I got a call that altered everything. I have the most amazing news. Brooke, mija, the voice of my mother, almost vibrated with anticipation over the phone. Mom, what's going on? I have been making plans with Alina's helper. We will host a traditional Dominican wedding celebration for you. A true celebration with the entire family. Traditional cuisine and dancing. It will be flawless. My blood froze. Mom, it's really not required. It's essential. Of course, you married so fast. We were unable to celebrate appropriately. According to Elena's assistant, she thinks the idea is fantastic and that Alina will be astonished. Elena's helper. I didn't even be aware that Alina had provided my mother with the contact details of her assistant. When did that occur? What time are you exactly organizing this gathering? Saturday of next week. Everything is set up. The church sanctuary, the band, the caterers. Your cousins are traveling from California. It will be stunning. I ended the call. I had the feeling that I was drowning. Hours of scrutiny from my extended family were necessary for a Dominican wedding celebration. Speeches about love and commitment that would sting like knives. And traditional dances that demanded real chemistry. Within my chest, that night, I was pacing the living room like a caged animal, when Alina got home. "We have a problem," I said, declared before she had even put her handbag down. "What's wrong?" "My mom is planning a surprise wedding for us. Celebration with my whole extended family on Saturday." Elena's expression went utterly blank. "What is she?" "It seems that your assistant has been assisting her with the planning. The entire Dominican celebration, including speeches, dancing, and perhaps 50 family members." "I don't have an assistant." "What?" "I don't have an assistant." Intruding questions about our relationship. "Haven't had one in years." As the realization dawned on us, we looked at one another. Alina's assistant, supporting my mom's party preparation. "Is it someone from your company? Someone who is aware of our arrangement?" "No." Elena's worried voice was piercing. "Everyone who is aware of this signed confidentiality agreements. The investor deal collapses if it is discovered that our marriage is a fraud." "What do we do?" "We attend the celebration and put on our best show ever." The week before the event was a crash course in family dynamics and Dominican culture, Alina demanded, familiarizing herself with traditional wedding customs and picking up some basic Spanish phrases. She approached it like preparing for a final exam, making notes, and posing thorough inquiries regarding She went over her handwritten flashcards and said, "Tell me about your cousin Maria again." "Mia is my mom's daughter of a sister. She married her high school boyfriend, is 30 years old, and has 2 children. She will inquire about your family and your company, as well as the painful details of how we met. And your dad's brother, your Uncle Carlos, he's leaving to give you unsolicited marriage advice and attempt to get you intoxicated on homemade rum. Simply nod and concur." All of his statements, Alina applied the same concentration she brought to board meetings to her notes. It was charming, and seeing her put in so much effort to fit into my world when none of it existed was heartbreaking all at once. Are you nervous?" I inquired. "Terrified," she said. "I don't get along with families or gatherings or feigning joy. All you need to do is be yourself. They will adore you." "I'm calculating and cold." "That isn't very endearing. You're not as frigid as you believe." Something vulnerable caught her attention as she looked up from her notes, flickering in her eyes. "How do you know the coffee every morning the way you ask?" "Regarding my paintings, you saw that I enjoy cooking, so you bought groceries without asking. People who are cold don't." "Such things, if you say so. Those are merely pragmatic considerations." Everything was gray and miserable due to the rainy weather that was typical of the Pacific Northwest on Saturday. I got up, trying to decide between dresses in front of my closet that would meet my family's standards while still having a sense of self. Alina showed up in my doorway in a dress that was navy blue, that was tasteful without being ostentatious. She had mastered the art of reading my family's expectations. "You look," I said, "beautiful." And I meant it. "Do you, too?" I had selected a dress in a deep red color that highlighted the warm tones in my skin, and I had opted for natural curls for my hair rather than sleek styles. Madison had a preference. Instead of looking like Alina's immaculately styled wife, I wanted to look like Brooke for this party. The white flowers, string lights, and Dominican flags were used to transform the church hall. The scent of plantains and pernil filled the air as speakers in every corner played maranga music. My family had exceeded their own expectations. Amer, Brooke me, in a blur of excitement and perfume. My mother came out and drew me into a tight embrace. "You look stunning." "Welcome to the family, Alina," with unexpected grace. Alina yielded to my mother's embrace and even managed to smile. That appeared to be real. "I appreciate being a part of the celebration." Mrs. Calderon, Brooke discusses her family continuously. "Call me Carmen. Please, we are now family." The evening started off with introductions to hundreds of relatives. It seemed everyone is excited to meet Alina and learn about our romance. We would practiced our rendezvous at the gallery, our brief romance, and our choice to elope rather than have a lavish wedding. At first sight, it was love, I informed Sophia, my cousin. Alina's hand was warm in mine. After glancing at her, I knew it was her. Alina did her part flawlessly by squeezing my fingers. My dress was splattered with wine by Brooke, and I had to see her again. I knew. Sophia sighed. How romantic. You're very fortunate. If only she knew how fortunate she was a part of this entire charade. There were several conversations going on during the noisy, tumultuous dinner, in both Spanish and English at the same time. Alina enthusiastically sampled the traditional dishes and gave my aunt's cooking high marks, and responded to numerous inquiries concerning her job and her intentions toward me. "You take good care of our Brooke," my Uncle Carlos cautioned, emphasizing his point with his fork at Alina. "I know how lucky I am. She's special." That one, something in Alina's voice tightened my chest as she answered. The speeches followed dinner. My dad, his eyes were already cloudy with emotion as he stood up with a glass of rum. Brooke used to paint pictures when she was younger of her upcoming nuptials. The bride was always content. There was always dancing. Love was always present. "Seeing you tonight, I see the little girl's dreams coming true with her and Alina. I had to turn away when I felt like crying. Under the table, Alina's hand touched mine and gave me a light squeeze. My father, Alina, thank you for making our daughter so happy. Welcome to our crazy family. The toast was followed by additional. I could hardly recall the speeches of my relatives. They are all discussing love, dedication, and the sanctity of union. Every word weighed heavily on my chest, like a lie. The dancing followed. This is where I was. As the band began to play a slow bachata, Alina whispered, "Dread, just do as I say." I guided her to the dance floor, putting her hands on my waist and mine on her shoulders. The music was romantic and gentle, and everything. My relatives smiled approvingly as they watched us. As we swayed together, I whispered, "You're doing great." "I don't know what I'm doing. Most of the time, neither do I." She chuckled, a genuine laugh that totally changed her face. The song changed to a faster one, and I thought, that's reassuring. Demonstrated the fundamental merge steps to Alina. She picked things up quickly and became more confident as she followed my instructions. She was smiling and out of breath when I spun her out and pulled her back. "Surprised?" she said. "This is actually fun." In her tone, "You sound surprised. Normally, I don't like going to parties. What do you typically like?" "Reading, working, and being alone." "It sounds lonely." Prior to her not finishing the sentence, I believed I liked lonely, but my heart raced because of something in her eyes. I could sense that we were getting too close and moving too naturally together, myself slipping into the delusion we had produced. There was more dancing, more toasts, and more questions as the evening went on, from well-meaning family members. I felt proud of Alina in a way that had nothing to do with the way she charmed everyone she met. To do with our fictitious agreement, my family loved her. She was kind, funny, and intelligent. During a peaceful, I was cornered in the restroom by my cousin Maria. "Brooke, I'm very happy for you. Alina looks amazing." "Yes, she is. She is clearly smitten with you. Real love is demonstrated by the way she looks at you when she believes no one is looking." My stomach fell. "What are you saying? Some people pretend to have chemistry, but you can't pretend that someone's face changes when they gaze at their beloved. Every time Alina sees you, her face brightens." I desired to inform Maria that she was incorrect. Alina was merely a superb actress. However, as the evening wore on, I began to notice details that caused me to reevaluate all of my preconceived notions about our arrangement. How Alina's, during conversations, a hand hovered over my back. How she found humor in my jokes even when they weren't, especially amusing. When she believed no one was listening, she spoke my name softly. When my grandmother, near nightfall, I walked up to Alina and observed from the other side of the room as the two of them had what appeared to a serious discussion. In her 80s, my grandmother spoke very little English and possessed a remarkable talent for spotting false pretenses. "What was said to you by my grandmother?" I questioned Alina. "On the way home, she warned me to be careful with your heart because you've been hurt before." She stated in Spanish. She used a combination of Spanish and strong hand gestures to say it. "And what did you say?" "Her." Alina remained silent for a while, concentrating on the road that was slick with rain. I assured her that I would never intentionally cause you pain. That promise weighed heavily on both of us, and I pondered whether Alina was aware that she was already causing me pain simply by being herself. Because in between the acting classes and the coffee in the morning, and I had truly begun to fall in love with her after the way she danced with me tonight. We returned to the penthouse and stood in the... We were still dressed for the party in the living room, and there was a lot of silence between us. Finally, Alina said, "That went well." "Yes, you were flawless. Your family is amazing. I understand your desire for their approval. They thought you were great, despite the fact that I'm not truly suitable for you." I was surprised by the question. "Why do you believe that you're not sufficient for me?" "Brooke, hurry up. You're kind, talented, and sincere. Every room you walk into is brightened by you. I'm a socially awkward workaholic who had to pay someone to marry me. I didn't need payment from you. You decided to compensate me. A distinction exists. Is there?" I glanced at her as she stood in my grandmother's living room. Her hair slightly, lipstick faded from hours of smiling, mused from dancing, and I wanted to correct her regarding everything, that any woman would be fortunate to have her attention, because she was both intelligent and attractive. "Rather," I stated, before I could say something that would ruin everything. I said goodnight and fled to my bedroom. However, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking about how Alina had held me that night, as I listened to her moving around in the kitchen, or the expression in her eyes when my father greeted her as a member of the family while we were dancing. On one point, Maria was correct. Alina's look at me tonight was too real to fake. Alina was asked if she was aware that she wasn't acting. No longer. After the Dominican celebration, the weeks fell into the pattern that was too familiar for my own good. In the penthouse, Alina and I moved around one another as if we had been married for years rather than months. She discovered that I painted more effectively when music was playing, so she began to play classical playlists while she left for work. I found that she actually preferred my cooking to the pricey takeout she had previously relied on, so I had completely taken over the kitchen. During one of these peaceful moments at home, everything began to fall apart. I had a new painting series in progress, my most ambitious piece to date. The canvases displayed figures, exploring themes of identity and authenticity that are a bit too close to the truth while trapped between masks. Home. When Alina returned home from another board, I had been painting late into the night, engrossed in the creative process. Getting together, she entered the living room, untied her tie, and said, "You're still up," unable to fall asleep. Occasionally, she stood behind me, looking at the canvas I was working on, which depicted a woman taking off a mask with her actual face partially exposed underneath. The brushwork was among my best ever. It was honest and poignant in certain ways that frightened me. Brooke, this is amazing. This piece truly belongs in galleries. Thank you. But galleries don't exactly approach up-and-coming artists to solicit exhibitions. If they saw, Alina took out her phone and began photographing my paintings. But I was too exhausted to object and too engrossed in. She said, "I know some people in the art world. Let me make sure I have the creative high to think clearly about what I'm doing. Some calls, you don't have to do that. Alina, I'd like to assist. This work is worthy of." Alina was gone before I woke up the following morning, but I had to leave because there was a note next to my coffee mug. I spent the day painting, riding the inspiration wave. So don't worry, there will be a surprise later. I was early for meetings that got me through the night before at 3:00 p.m. I thought there would be a delivery or perhaps Alina was coming home early, but when I opened the door, I saw a woman with a business card in an expensive suit. "I'm Sarah Chen from the Morrison Gallery, and I know you have some pieces we could look at." Miss Cauldron. My heart stopped when I saw the Morrison Gallery, one of Portland's most prominent art venues. I apologize, I must have made a mistake. I had a dream of showing my work there, but I never thought it was truly possible. We would love to see your work if someone got in touch with us about it and sent us some really striking pictures. You have time. I ushered Sarah into the living room, where my temporary studio was strewn with my paintings. Space, her deliberate attention to detail, caused my palms to perspire as she went from canvas to canvas. "These are amazing," she whispered, looking at the mask series. "Honest, unvarnished, technically superb. How long have you been working on this theme?" "For a few months. We would like to present to you an opening, full show, solo exhibition, catalog, reception." "Do you currently have the gallery representing you?" "No, I've never had gallery representation, but that will soon change." After she left, I spent an additional hour talking about specifics, deadlines, and contracts that seemed too good to be true. I felt as though I was living someone else's life while I sat in the empty penthouse, and when Alina returned home that night, the Morrison Gallery wants to give me a solo show, so I'm waiting for her with a mix of appreciation and perplexity. Elena's face lit up with real excitement as she said, "That's incredible." Before she had even put down her purse, "I just called you and sent some pictures, and your work was gallery quality." "How did you do that?" "Alina, galleries like Morrison don't just look at random applicants. They made their own choice based on your talent. Pictures taken by strangers. You must have strong ties there." Her face flashed, too quickly for me to read. I may have previously contributed a small amount to their educational initiatives. How little. That's not crucial. What counts is that they saw your work and appreciated it. "Alina, what was the amount of your donation?" I knew the answer would be negative, because it had been so quiet for so long. $50,000. "You bought me this exhibition." "I didn't buy anything. I just made sure they would view your work with an open mind." "That's the same thing." "Your paintings, Brooke, were self-evident. Donation simply got you in the door." I was extremely nauseous because all of my artistic accomplishments had been on my own worth via my own diligence and skill. The notion that this chance was bought instead of earned made me feel like a phony. "I was attempting to assist by making me a charity case by providing you with the chance you merit. How can I determine whether I truly deserve it?" Elena's face hardened. "You're acting absurdly. Links and everyone uses networking in the art world. But I don't. How has that worked out for you? When I met you, you were sleeping on a friend's couch because you were unable to pay your rent. At least my failures were my own. But the fact that the words were true didn't make them any less painful. Successes belong to you, too. Brooke, I can't paint those canvases for you. I can't make your vision a reality or carry out your method. All I did was call a call that was supported by $50,000. The admission hung in the air between us. All right, you want to know the truth? I've been purchasing your paintings like a ticking time bomb. You mean you've been purchasing my paintings? Each one you've completed. I've been buying them through middlemen ever since you moved in here. The room began to spin. How many? All of them. Of them. A total of 12 paintings. I sat down on the couch and tried to comprehend what every sale I'd celebrated, every little triumph that had given me hope that I might finally, because you deserve financial stability and your work is excellent. Building something real had been a lie. You make it. I was safeguarding my investment. You don't make that choice. Your work would suffer, and our arrangement would be negatively reflected if you were under financial stress. There it was, the icy, pragmatic justification that diminished our whole relationship to a transaction. All of the tender gestures, laughs, and moments of connection I've experienced. I reiterated flatly that our arrangement was simply Alina safeguarding her investment. Yes, the fictitious marriage that was, we agreed that it would end with me taking my money and leaving your life. Right? Because this is all just business to you? It's business. Of course. What else would it be? The question hung between us, loaded with, what else could it be? It would be genuine feelings growing between two people, despite everything I couldn't say, who weren't supposed to fall in love. They would dance at family gatherings, share paintings, and have morning coffee, parties. If Alina could feel that way, it would be love. I can't, I muttered, do this no more. Can't do what? Pretend that this means something when it obviously doesn't. You're overreacting. Brooke. Am I? You've been in charge of every part of my life without telling me. My artwork, sales, opportunities for my gallery, and likely other things I'm not even aware of yet. I've been supporting you. Elena's jaw tensed. If that's how you want to see it, how come they've been treating me like another business asset? You just told me that everything I believed I was doing on my own was actually you. So is there anyone else I should see it? Pulling strings in the background. Brooke, you have a genuine talent. The paintings are genuine. And the fact that I created some opportunities doesn't take away from that. Rather, it affects me. I got up and Alina followed me as I made my way to my bedroom, needing some space to think. Where are you going? To pack. You can't leave. We're 8 months into a 12-month agreement. The investor deal, sue me, Brooke, be reasonable, is almost done. Find another person to be your phony wife. I don't want another person. Her unvarnished honesty. At my bedroom door, a voice interrupted me. And when I turned around, Alina appeared more vulnerable than I had ever seen her before. Previously, why? Because you're you. Because you make bad coffee. But insist on. Nevertheless, the fact that you paint everything you come into contact with somehow gives this place alive. Because I feel like I might not be as aloof and cunning as everyone else when you laugh at my awful jokes. For the first time in my life, I look forward to returning home every day. So Alina's words really got to me. The chest, but they also made things worse. How could Alina have cared for me even a little? If any of that is true, why did you deceive me regarding the paintings? About manipulating my career without telling me? The gallery, because I knew that you would respond precisely as you did. And you knew that manipulating my entire artistic career, I knew you would be too proud to take assistance. This isn't assistance, Alina. Assistance is giving guidance or making introductions. This is control. I didn't ask. I was attempting to look after you. I asked you to pay me to act as your wife, so that you could take care of me. But my words came out more harshly than I had intended. Elena's face went blank, her emotional walls slamming back. But I was too hurt and angry to take them back. Into place. This is a business arrangement. You're right, she said coolly. For a second, Alina, I forgot that. Didn't mean. The contract makes it very clear that you will lose the remaining $50,000. Are you ready to face the financial repercussions of breaking the agreement early? And suddenly, we were back to being strangers. Elena's expression was unreadable, her voice clear and businesslike. The woman who was gone, replaced by the icy CEO who had approached me in that way and had just admitted to looking forward to returning home. Restaurant months ago. Yes, I replied. Despite the fact that losing that money would ruin me monetarily. I'm ready. Okay, I'll have my attorney prepare the termination documents. Okay. We looked at one another. I could see the precise moment when Alina shut down across the bedroom that had begun to feel like mine. She straightened her shoulders, raised her chin, and regained her untouchability. I'll stay at a hotel. You don't have to leave tonight, she said. You can gather your belongings and depart by tomorrow night. This is the finality in her voice sliced through me like a knife. Home. I think it's better if we don't see each other again. This was it. 8 months of quiet evenings and mornings spent together, along with developing feelings that seemed to mean nothing to her. Alina left the bedroom, saying, "Good luck with your exhibition. Brooke, I hope it's everything you wanted." I sat on the bed we had never shared, and a few minutes later, I heard the front door close without turning around, felt as though my heart were being ripped out of my chest, as I gazed at the river view that I had come to love. The worst part was that Alina was correct about one thing. The Morrison Gallery exhibition fulfilled every dream I had ever had as an artist. However, it felt hollow to know that it was based on her money rather than my merit. So I began packing my belongings in an attempt to pack my entire life into the duffel bag I brought with me when I first arrived 8 months ago. But I had accumulated more than just clothing and art supplies while I was here. I had amassed happiness and hope and sentiments for a woman who viewed our relationship as a business deal. By the time Alina returned the following, I departed that evening, leaving the credit card she had given me on the kitchen counter with a note that said, I didn't trust myself to write anything more than thank you, because what I truly wanted to write was that 6 weeks after leaving Alina's house, I realized that I loved her, and that was the one thing that would destroy our relationship. I was sleeping on my friend Maya's couch in a penthouse, a studio apartment that smelled like old takeout and cat litter. I had been working on new pieces for the Morrisons, and my art supplies were all over her coffee table, gallery display, but all of my paintings appeared lifeless and flat. Maya worked 2 shifts at a restaurant downtown, and every night when I got home, I was still staring at a blank screen. Canvases. One evening, she threw her server apron on the ground and said, You need to snap out of this. You haven't completed a single new piece, and the exhibition is in 2 weeks. I understand. What is the issue? Then, the issue was that I thought of Alina each time I picked up a paintbrush. She would observe me working with such intense concentration, how she would bring me coffee without asking, the morning light pouring through those ceiling to floor windows I would never see again in the penthouse. I have been blocked. You're devastated. Maya was correct. However, admitting it was akin to conceding defeat. It was not intended for me to develop feelings for Alina. We had never included that in our arrangement. In any case, it makes no difference. She made it apparent that our relationship was solely business-related. Was she? However, what are you saying? Maya pushed aside a partially completed painting of gray, stormy skies, and sat down beside me on the couch. Skies. According to what you've told me, she acquired Spanish to impress your family, bought your artwork, and secured you a gallery exhibition, and performed a meringue dance at your cousin's wedding. I don't think that's business. She claimed to be safeguarding her financial investment, and you thought she was real. It was simpler for me to believe her than to think Alina might genuinely give a damn about me. Walking away became much more difficult if she truly cared about me. It doesn't, regardless of my beliefs. She didn't fight to let me go. She might have assumed you wanted to leave. Yes, I wanted to go. Did you? As I gazed at my incomplete painting, the question lingered in the air. Was leaving Alina something I wanted to do? Or did I desire her to stand up for me in order to demonstrate that our partnership was more than just a business deal? My phone was buzzing with a text message from an unidentified number. Tomorrow at 200 Mel. There will be an opening reception for the new mural, Pioneer Courthouse Square. I thought you might find it interesting. Confused, I gazed at the message. I hadn't done any mural painting lately, and, without a doubt, I hadn't offered any ideas for installations of public art. Are you anticipating any packages? Maya, me, no, why? I haven't painted any murals, but I've heard about one that opens tomorrow. Maya examined my shoulder at the text. It might be an error, but the message seemed deliberate in some way. The following afternoon, my curiosity overcame me. A small group of people had gathered in Pioneer Courthouse Square when I rode the bus downtown, around what looked like a wall that was covered. I knew a number of Portland's artistic community members, including Morrison Gallery's Sarah Chen. She waved me over when she saw me. Brooke, I'm so happy you were able to attend. Make it to what precisely? The presentation of your most recent creation. I apologize, but there have been some error. I didn't make any artwork for the public. Sarah appeared perplexed. But your name appears on the commissioning paperwork. Your account was used to make the payment. Before I could inquire further, at a small podium close to the covered wall, someone was tapping a microphone with questions. Gentlemen and ladies, we appreciate your presence as we unveil love in all its forms. A brand new mural created by local artist Brooke Calderon. My heart stopped beating. I had brought up the title months prior during discussing my ideal projects with Alina, a celebration of love in everything. Its forms, showcasing happy and connected moments between couples from various backgrounds and orientations. The cover dropped away, and I let out a gasp. The mural was so large that it filled a building's side wall that faced the square. However, it wasn't my creation. The aesthetic was entirely different from mine. It was more realistic and, with the exception of a tiny area in the lower right corner, it is more detailed than anything I could make. There, painted with, using my unique color scheme and brushwork, I created a figure that was strikingly similar to Alina. She was reaching across what appeared to be a divide toward another figure that resembled me, their hands nearly touching. both crossable and vast. In addition to congratulating me on work I hadn't done, the audience was cheering. As Sarah questioned me about my methods and sources of inspiration, I felt as though I was living in someone else's dream. Pardon me, I said to Sarah. I forced myself to say, I need some air. Crowd, my heart racing. This mural was commissioned in my name, and it featured a portion that resembled my labor, someone with access to my bank account details and knowledge of my ideal project. Brooke. I pivoted. I turned around and saw Alina standing behind me, looking nervous in a way I had never seen her do before. Wearing a gray wool coat. Did you do this? The mural was commissioned by me. Indeed. However, I only painted the little area in the corner. The remainder was completed. Miguel Santos. He has extraordinary talent. What are you doing? Alina? I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly, but it seems like I'm making a big gesture. She appeared so insecure, so distinct from the self-assured CEO who had approached me in that eatery. Around her shoulders, her hair was loose, rather than being pulled back in its typical flawless bun. She also had paint under her fingernails. Have you been painting? Attempting to, even though I'm awful at it. I reasoned that if I could better comprehend your process, perhaps I could. You're better. I understand that the gallery situation has you furious. Alina, you've every right to exist. I ought to have informed you about the donation and the purchase of your paintings. I ought to have inquired, rather than simply choosing what was best for you. Indeed, you ought to have. I'm not very good at making requests. I'm not very good at acknowledging my need for others. All of my adult life, I've thought that emotional attachments are a sign of weakness. That would work against me. Her voice was so vulnerable that it tightened my chest. What was different? You evolved. Everything. Living with you, observing your creations, and witnessing your candid and open-minded approach to the world. I wanted to be different because of you. I'm here, Alina, if that's all you need me to do to complete the contract, since I adore you. I was struck by the words like lightning. Alina Voss, who took a business-like approach to everything. Transaction. Who had hired me to pretend to marry her, had never been in a committed relationship, and was standing in Pioneer. She told me she loved me in Courthouse Square. That's not what you mean. I mean it. I've had it in mind for months. Most likely since we danced at your family's party that evening. Perhaps even before then. So why did you release me? Since you stated it was a business relationship, and I assumed you wanted that. Because I was afraid that if I told you how I felt, you would assume that it was just another tactic to control you and your statements about safeguarding your investment. I said the most hurtful thing I could think of because I was scared and hurt, and Alina's face crumpled a little. It was easier for you to hate me than to acknowledge that I was failing. I examined her face, searching for indications of. I saw only fear and unadulterated honesty, not deceit or calculation. Alina, I understand that you can't simply use murals and extravagant displays to buy your way back into my life. Which is why I'm not making you an offer. I'm just giving myself the true me, whether it be in the form of money, opportunities, or anything else. Who is the real you? Someone who has been alone so long that she has forgotten how to let people in. Not the business version. Someone who loves you and is afraid to show vulnerability, but is willing to try because you're worth the risk. She took a folded piece of paper from her hand and said, You're enough to rip up our contract and start over with something real. Coat pocket. Our marriage contract was ripped cleanly in two. Alina, what are you doing? This time, she's making a serious proposal, retrieved a small black box from her other pocket, and when she opened it, I was astounded to see a ring. It was a thin, twisted band rather than a conventional diamond, shaped like a paintbrush, with tiny jewels set into the bristles. It's not worth much monetarily, Alina said, but I had it made from one of your old paints, he said, kneeling in the center of the square. Brushes. People in our immediate vicinity had seen the painting you used for the first time that I knew I was in love with you. Began to take notice, and I could hear rumors of excitement as phones began to come out. Brooke Calderon, this time, will you truly marry me? No business agreements, no time constraints, just love in all its messiness. Intricate, lovely shapes. I saw Alina kneeling on the damp sidewalk, her pricey coat getting. The woman who had erected barriers around her heart was filthy, her meticulously preserved poise totally gone. Was offering to tear them all down for me. Alina, get up. She stood despite the disappointment that flashed across her face. I said, ask me again in a year after we've dated for a year. Genuine, following our first argument that isn't related to fictitious marriage contracts. After you've met my family as my real girlfriend rather than my hired wife. Elena's expression brightened with, I want to know that what we have is genuine and not based on desperation. You want to do this the right way, or commercial agreements or lavish displays, but rather on true compatibility and sincere love. And if, after a year, I'll say no if you decide I'm not worth the risk, but if you're prepared to put in the effort to be patient. Alina, yes, I believe we may have something pretty amazing if we let this develop organically, rather than attempting to control it. I can be patient. I can do the work. That's good because dating me won't be like running a company merger because I'm messy and emotional. She put the ring back in the box and extended her hand, saying, "I'm counting on you to leave paint on everything." I called her in and asked, "Want to go on a real first date with me?" I took her hand and felt the same spark of connection that had terrified us both. I would really like that. A year later, Alina and I were standing in front of my family and the friends we'd made together, the location where she'd proposed. My art career had taken off on its own, so I said yes without hesitation to marry her. The Morrison Gallery, due to my talent and diligence, I had earned commissions and opportunities as a result of the exhibition's success. I had learned to accept assistance without viewing it as a threat, and Alina had learned to help me advance my career without controlling it. Manipulation. After 3 months of dating, we had our first serious argument, which was about Alina's. We had worked through my obstinate refusal to allow her to assist me with anything and my propensity to use money to solve problems, with tolerance, understanding, and the open dialogue that our fictitious marriage had never permitted. Spent a week at Alina's family cabin on our first actual vacation together, painting dreadful landscapes and creating love in the afternoon light coming through the old windows. Alina had shown me her childhood photo albums. Sharing, we had moved in together, and she had heard tales of parents who passed away too soon, making her fearful of falling in love with anyone. Once more, this time to a home where we could live together and have a suitable art studio. Alina had discovered to prepare simple meals, and I had gained an appreciation for pricey wine. We had adopted a cat that slept on Alina's laptop keyboard and knocked over my paint water. The wedding itself was small and ideal, reflecting our true selves together with a blend of personal touches and Dominican customs. Although Alina's pronunciation of her vows in Spanish is still a work in progress, her sincerity was evident. Te amo, Brooke. I adore your unkempt art studio and your awful hair in the morning. I adore how you find beauty in everything. Inspire me to have the courage to witness it as well. A canvas next to the altar bore my own vows, abstract color swirls that, in some way, encapsulated my feelings about the woman who had begun as a complete stranger with a business proposal and ended up becoming my soulmate. As we performed our first dance together as a legally wedded couple, Alina, "Was the wait worth it?" she whispered in my ear. I glanced at the artwork and our families enjoying each other's company, covering the venue's walls, at the life we'd created with perseverance, integrity, and genuine love, each and every day, with a smile that could light up the entire room. Alina spun me out and drew me back. We had begun with a phony marriage founded on need, but after putting in the much more effort to truly love one another, we had created something genuine. The best part was realizing that this was only the